These mist-shrouded forests of western Oregon are among the nation's most productive and valuable timberlands. More than 2 million acres of these forests are managed by the Bureau of Land Management, the BLM. They play an extremely important role in the lifestyle and economy of the Pacific Northwest. I'm Mark Manning for BLM. Originally part of America's vast public domain, most of these lands were granted to the Oregon and California Railroad in the 1860s as compensation for building a line from Portland to California. Becoming known as the O&C lands, they were granted under the condition that they be sold in small tracts to encourage settlement. But the work needed to clear even a few acres of the dense forest for a small family farm discouraged agriculture and attracted few buyers. During the railroad era, the public began to see that the continent's resources were limited, and many Americans resented the practices of railroad companies and their land grants. Because the O&C Company and its successors ignored the conditions of the original grant, the federal government reclaimed ownership of the unsold O&C lands in 1916, returning administration of these lands to the General Land Office, a forerunner of the BLM. To improve the management of these lands, the 1937 O&C Act called for implementing sustained yield forestry. Today, the Bureau of Land Management applies state-of-the-art management to these forests. For years, BLM has been applying practices that are considered innovative even today. Although timber production may be the most visible activity, managing for timber is only part of BLM's job. As a multiple-use agency, BLM is charged with managing the lands in its care for the good of all Americans, allowing as many uses as possible within the framework of good management. Congress has entrusted the Bureau with ensuring that these lands continue to produce high-quality forests. BLM takes this responsibility seriously. Accounting for 14% of the timber harvested in Oregon in recent years, these forests are special places that the Bureau strives to manage in an environmentally responsible way by paying special attention to all resources within the ecosystem, including soil, water, fish, and wildlife. BLM's forest management involves many resources and uses. Almost 420,000 acres, or 20% of the O&C forests, are withdrawn from timber harvesting. These areas include recreation sites, forests along streams, fragile sites such as very steep slopes, bald eagle protection areas, and unique lands that require special management, such as wilderness, areas of critical environmental concern, and research and outstanding natural areas. BLM has set aside thousands of acres to maintain old-growth forest values. Spectacular virgin stands, gigantic trees that will never be cut. In preserves such as the Valley of the Giants outstanding natural area in the Oregon Coast Range, Visitors walk beneath stands of towering Douglas fir that are 400 to 600 years old. BLM is managing these forests to retain their diversity of species and the genetic materials of this pristine ecosystem. Recognizing the importance of fish and wildlife habitat on the public lands, the Bureau is constantly working to improve habitat quality. BLM has exerted great effort to protect the northern spotted owl, a forest inhabitant, and as early as 1974 began to recognize it as a major consideration in forest planning. Having studied this bird for more than 15 years, BLM biologists have compiled extensive information about the owl and its habitat. BLM has inventoried, studied, banded, and tracked the spotted owl throughout western Oregon. The results of this research will help us better understand owl ecology and owl habitat requirements. BLM has also set aside numerous management areas for the interim and long-term protection of this species. A major BLM emphasis is to increase the productivity of stream habitats for salmon and steelhead trout, fish that migrate upriver from the ocean to spawn. Better stream habitat conditions increase salmon and trout populations, which in turn improve commercial and sports fishing. To preserve the cool water temperatures that these fish depend upon, BLM maintains mature trees for shade along streams. When these trees die, their debris falls into stream channels, creating pools, one of the most important rearing habitats for these fish. The debris also traps spawning gravels and provides food for the aquatic insects that fish eat. BLM's 5-year plan to improve habitat for salmon and steelhead calls for 84 projects on 74 streams, including almost 3,000 in-stream structures designed to imitate woody debris, 169 large pools in bedrock areas to provide rearing habitat, and at least 37 fish passage projects to open up more than 150 miles of inaccessible high-quality streams. For example, on Lake Creek near Eugene, slick bedrock and 2 waterfalls blocked the movement of fish into Triangle Lake and miles of upstream habitat. With local support, BLM built a side channel around the bedrock area and 2 fish lighters, one 275 feet long and the other 90 feet long, which allow salmon and steelhead to navigate the falls and gain access to new spawning and rearing areas. In managing forests for timber production, one of BLM's greatest concerns is maintaining a balance between the trees that are cut and the trees that replace them. Called sustained yield, this concept allows for the continuous replacement of harvested trees and the perpetual regrowth of the forest. Today, less than 2% of BLM's forests are harvested each year, which means that at any time, only about 10% of the forests show the immediate effects of harvesting because trees are quickly replanted and established within 5 years. To ensure sustained yield, BLM manages on a 10-year planning cycle. All activities are constantly monitored and readjusted every decade. The first step in the timber sale process is planning and the preparing of an environmental assessment, a report describing the actions to be taken in the forest and analyzing in detail how these actions will affect the environment. The environmental assessment is prepared by an interdisciplinary team of resource specialists. soil scientists, hydrologists, foresters, botanists, fish and wildlife biologists, and archaeologists, all working together to ensure that major impacts are considered. In preparing the environmental assessment, BLM works with interested groups and individuals to address public concerns. The quality of scenery helps determine how the forest will be managed. Highly scenic areas, for example, may be selectively harvested or preserved for their beauty. BLM's timber management provisions in the environmental assessment are then compiled into a plan of operations called a timber sale layout plan. The layout plan specifies how timber will be harvested. It includes such details as the placement of roads, the shape and size of harvest areas, the methods of hauling logs from the site, and requirements to ensure prompt reforestation. This plan also lists measures to protect soil, water, sensitive plants, fish, wildlife, and archaeological resources. Next, BLM specialists, called timber cruisers, determine the volume of timber to be sold. After buying the timber by competitive bid and arranging for payment, the purchaser prepares a logging plan, which BLM must approve. Throughout the harvest, BLM specialists monitor the process to make sure that the logging plan is carried out and that the environment is protected. Although BLM forest managers examine several methods of harvesting when conducting a timber sale, most O&C timber is harvested by clear cutting, a method that has caused concern because of its temporary visual impacts. While being the most economical method of cutting even-aged forests, clear cutting is also needed for Douglas fir, the dominant O&C tree, because it does not regenerate and grow well in its own shade. This beautiful forest is second-growth timber that was clear-cut back in the 1920s. Clear cutting has short-term impacts that rapidly heal once the site is replanted. Trees that look like this when planted are 5 to 6 feet tall after only 5 years, and 15 to 20 feet tall at 15 years. At 40 years, the new forest typically reaches between 80 and 100 feet. BLM is seriously concerned with protecting the environment throughout logging operations. Harvested trees are moved to loading areas by methods that disturb the least amount of soil. Because of rainy conditions, logging roads are covered with gravel and built for year-round use. Dirt excavated during road building is often hauled away rather than pushed over slopes where it would be washed into streams. Buffer strips of trees are left along streams to help prevent erosion and maintain fish and wildlife habitat. And snags are left standing for cavity nesting birds. Once a site is harvested, it is prepared for replanting by disposing of logging debris called slash. One of the most practical ways of reducing slash is by prescribed burning, which also controls unwanted vegetation, reduces the threat of wildfire, and improves wildlife habitat. BLM's burning complies with the state's smoke management plan to ensure the least harm to air quality. After burning, BLM seeds certain clear-cut areas with grass and forbs to improve habitat for elk and deer. Nature itself often damages forests by windstorms, wildfire, and insect epidemics. On these sites, BLM's first priority is the stabilization of soil and water resources, followed by the sale and salvage of this valuable timber. BLM does not depend upon the O&C forests to regenerate themselves. Instead, seedlings are systematically planted. They are grown by contract nurseries like this one from seeds that have been collected, dried, and stored. BLM is working to develop genetically superior seeding stock to produce trees that survive better, grow faster, produce higher quality wood, and better resist disease. At its Walter H. Horning tree seed orchard, BLM has set aside 425 acres to produce genetically improved seeds for reforestation. Foresters and technicians are developing superior orchards by such methods as grafting cuttings from superior trees onto rootstocks and crossbreeding parent trees. The facility will ultimately produce more than 22 million improved tree seeds annually. The O&C forests are divided into 25 seed zones tied to 500-foot elevation levels. Seedlings planted within a particular elevation zone are grown from seeds collected in that zone. Each spring, a small army of workers begins the process of regenerating the forest. Seedlings are planted from 8 to 10 feet apart to guarantee productive forests in the future. In recent years, BLM has annually planted as many as 18 million trees in Oregon. Once planted on public land, trees are left to grow for 10 to 15 years. The forest then usually undergoes a thinning process to reduce density levels and allow the remaining trees to grow larger in a shorter time. This thinning leaves about 300 trees per acre. The cut trees are left to decay and provide nutrients for the growing forest. Between the ages of 40 and 60 years, trees are often thinned for a second time, and about a third of the trees in the stand are sold and harvested. When trees are roughly 80 years old, they may be harvested and the cycle begins again. BLM also promotes outdoor recreation in the Oregon forests, such as fishing, hunting, and just simply experiencing some of the world's most spectacular forests. BLM believes that special areas deserve special attention, that heavily visited areas need to be well managed. BLM's forests offer some of the nation's finest developed recreation sites for camping and day-use fun beneath the majestic forest canopy. Within 50 miles of Oregon's major population areas is BLM's Table Rock Wilderness Area. Here, hikers and backpackers travel on well-established trails through pristine areas to reach the summit of Table Rock. 6 streams in western Oregon have been designated wild and scenic rivers. A portion of the Rogue River in southern Oregon is designated as a wild river. Visitors enjoy the thrill of whitewater excitement amid the splendor of towering trees. BLM recreation specialists manage a challenging 40-mile-long trail that meanders through the river canyon. Another recreation opportunity consists of BLM's backcountry byways. These paved and well-maintained roads wind through lush forests where visitors can enjoy scenic vistas from their cars. Along the Alsea River Backcountry Byway, visitors often stop for lunch beside beautiful Alsea Falls. Near Reedsport, BLM has established the Dean Creek Elk Viewing Area, where an elk herd for years has grazed a privately owned meadow next to the highway. In response to local needs, BLM acquired 923 acres of elk habitat through a land exchange and worked with local groups to build an interpretive site and viewing area for visitors to watch these stately animals. Have a good hike. As you can see, a lot is going on in the forests of Oregon. BLM's multiple use management is well planned and guided by experienced professionals. Management balances many different uses. Only under conscientious management will Western Oregon's forests continue to be among the world's most productive. By protecting the environment, BLM ensures that special places remain special, that the marvels of the streams, trees, and meadows remain for all to enjoy. Timber production, of course, is an important part of forest management. BLM is managing timber so that these forests will permanently meet our needs for wood products, and planting trees to replace those harvested. By using the latest technology, the Bureau makes our forests as productive as they can be, and strives to disturb the environment as little as possible. BLM's management protects the soil and water on which our forests depend, and maintains and improves habitat for important plants and animals. And to increase the enjoyment of our forest and meet increasing public demands, BLM has developed high-quality recreation opportunities, like this area along the Quartzville Creek Wild and Scenic River. BLM's professionals work hard managing the O&C forests, your forests, and the result is not just trees, but a wealth of benefits for the American people for generations to come. Catching anything? Huh?